Would you please stand and join me in a moment of silent tribute and thanks, not only to the 15 deceased Officers of the Year and Chief Hostetlers and Cache, but also for the many officers who have given their lives throughout the years as they served and protected all of us. Thank you very much. Our keynote speaker this evening is one of my colleagues in the criminal justice system and the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Monroe County, Chris Gaal. Chris is a graduate of the Indiana University School of Law who has dedicated most of his career to public service. He has served on more boards and commissions than we have time to enumerate this evening. He served on the Common Council for the City of Bloomington from 2000 to 2006, serving as its president from 2002 to 2003. He was elected to his current position as prosecuting attorney for Monroe County in 2006 and reelected in 2010. During his tenure as prosecutor, he has been a tireless innovator of new programs to protect, among others, youth, sex crime victims, and the elderly. He has received a number of awards recognizing his efforts, including the 2008 Outstanding Service Award from the Campus Community Commission on Alcohol, the 2009 Visionary Leader Award from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, and the 2010 Outstanding Legal Professional Award from the Indiana Coalition Against Sexual Assault. He's also served on the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council and was the chair of the council during 2012. As you can readily see, he's earned distinction and respect across a broad spectrum for his hard work and his dedication to the people of Monroe County. Join me in welcoming our keynote speaker this evening, the Chief Prosecuting or Law Enforcement Officer of Monroe County, Prosecuting Attorney Chris Gaal.
Good evening. Thank you, Judge Todd. Thank you to the Exchange Club for inviting me to speak at this event and to be part of this. I'm humbled not only to be a part of honoring the Officer of the Year, clearly a couple of outstanding individuals this year, but also to be a part of saying thank you to all the officers who work so hard to protect the public safety of this community and whose actions and integrity help maintain the public trust of the community in our law enforcement institutions. I thought about what I wanted to say at this event, and I decided that what would be most meaningful from my vantage point as prosecutor and as a representative of law enforcement, as an officer of the court, and as an elected official in the community, and I decided that it would be to talk about this idea of the public trust. From my perspective, there is nothing that is more important in the work of law enforcement than to have the respect and the trust of the public, of the community. Because without it, law enforcement and the criminal justice system itself simply cannot function. Where does that public trust come from? We can talk about the quality of our institutions, our core values, our training programs, our organizational leadership, and all those things are important. A good organization, good training, good values, good leaders can help build public trust in our law enforcement institutions. But ultimately, what earns the respect of the community is the integrity of the individual people involved in the criminal justice system. The honesty and professionalism of individual law enforcement officers. Their reputation. Are they a good cop? Are they a truth teller? Can we trust them in this position of power and authority? When the public sees law enforcement as fair, as honest, as making the community a better place, as on the side of the truth, then the criminal justice system works. The individual day-to-day interactions that the people see on the street, or for that matter in the courtroom, either contribute to the public trust in the honor and the integrity of the criminal justice system, or detract from it. Respect from the community has to be earned, and it's something that can be lost. And it can be lost very quickly based on the isolated act of just one individual. And if that happens, you can bet that people will hear about it. It will be in the news. On the other hand, what people often don't hear about, what isn't on the front page of the newspaper, are the stories about the officers who just come in every day and do the job, day in and day out, are in and out of stressful situations, potentially dangerous situations, are yelled at, are second-guessed, and are rarely thanked. But they keep their cool and they do what's right. Maybe nothing dramatic. Maybe not a dramatic rescue that you see on the evening news on TV. But they're out there in the community responding to calls, interacting with citizens, solving everyday problems, making the community safer, and earning the public's respect every day, one call at a time. They are the unsung heroes. That kind of everyday integrity reflects honor on law enforcement and the criminal justice system. The good news is we have a lot of good cops. We have far more good cops than we have awards to give them. And despite some occasional serious crime, some dramatic headlines, for the most part, for a community our size, we are a relatively safe place to live. And that doesn't happen automatically. That takes a lot of hard work to stay ahead of the threats to public safety that keep popping up. It takes cooperation. We have a lot of different agencies in this jurisdiction. We have the Sheriff's Department, City of Bloomington Police Department, IUPD, State Police, Ellettsville, DNR, Excise, Steinsville, and others. And then you add the other components of the criminal justice system, prosecutor's office, judges. You add the community partners that we all work with every day, that we all depend on, like Bloomington Hospital, like the Department of Child Services, like Indiana University, like the local school systems. In order for us to get things done, we all have to work together in this community. And no one can dictate the terms of that cooperation. That cooperation is constantly being worked out, negotiated every day. And the amazing thing is that it happens, and that it happens in good faith, because that's what the community expects to happen. The community expects us to work together, and we do. Sometimes it requires a little bit of effort, a phone call here and there. Most of the time, it just happens because we know that it should happen, because we know that it needs to happen, that it's what the community expects. And as individuals, we know that we need to do what needs to be done, do what's right. Again, it comes down to the integrity and the honor of the individuals involved, making the everyday decisions, responding to the calls, doing the job that needs to be done, and doing what's right. The police are on the front lines. They're out there on the street. They're interacting with the public. They're still there, even when many of our other offices have closed for the day. It may sound cliche or simplistic, but the most important thing that we can do as individuals who work in the criminal justice system is simply to do what's right. You can worry about a lot of things. What are people going to think? What's the newspaper going to say? What if someone is unhappy? Those of you who've worked in law enforcement or in the criminal justice system may have noticed we can't make everyone happy. That's the nature of the job. Chances are, if you're doing the job and you're doing the job right, you're always going to make someone unhappy. And if you worry too much about trying to make everyone happy and let those kind of concerns drive your decision making, you'll start making bad decisions. You'll start treating people unequally. You'll start cutting corners on doing what's right. And you'll undermine people's confidence in the fairness and impartiality of the criminal justice system, the public trust. We can't afford that. That price is too high. That's why prosecutors have an ethical duty to be ministers of justice, not just trying to get a conviction, but seeking the truth. Not just advocacy, but always seeking justice. That's why police officers must be truth tellers. That's why our professional ethics and the integrity of our position as public servants always comes first, because the criminal justice system depends on it in order to function, depends on the public trust. Law enforcement can be a tough job, and it hasn't gotten any easier over the years. Shortly after I took office as prosecutor, I went to a training put on by the National District Attorneys Association, the NDAA, which is our national organization for prosecutors across the country. It was a career prosecutor training. It was an intensive 2-week-long program. And one of the things that we talked about was how the public's perception of prosecutors and of law enforcement has changed over the years, over time. And the old guard prosecutors, the guys who'd been doing this job for 20 or 30 years, were complaining that, hey, you know, it's not like the good old days when, in the good old days, people had respect for law enforcement. They had respect for the prosecutor. You'd stand up in court and you'd be the good guy. You were wearing the white hat. People would defer to you. You were going to tell them the truth. And what they told us at this conference was, the reality is times have changed, not just in Bloomington, Indiana, but everywhere. It's not as common to find that automatic deference to law enforcement, deference to authority these days. These days, people are inundated with media stories that involve the abuse of power or official misconduct. At the time that I took this training, this career prosecutor training, the big story in the media was Gary Nifong, who you may or may not remember was the prosecutor in North Carolina who filed charges against players on the Duke University lacrosse team and who overstepped the ethical boundaries in some of the public statements that he made to the media about the case. And he was sanctioned for it. He lost his license to practice law. He lost his position. That incident hurt the reputation of prosecutors everywhere across the country. We all got painted with that brush. Stories about official misconduct always make the news. People see that and they're cynical. People are suspicious of authority, suspicious of government, rightly or wrongly. And in Monroe County, we've all heard juries here have a reputation as a tough audience. They too can be suspicious of authority, suspicious of government. They can subject our work to strict scrutiny. And it's a fact that sometimes when I or one of my deputy prosecutors are picking jurors in a serious case, in a murder case, in a rape case, that we can have an uphill battle in establishing a rapport, in establishing trust with potential jurors. And we're not looking for jurors who will be biased in our favor. We're just looking for potential jurors who will be open to hearing our case, people who won't shut us down because of some negative association that they have in their mind with law enforcement or with authority, because of some story that they've heard or a newspaper article that they've read that will cause them to view our evidence negatively, distrust our witnesses, distrust our case. What they told us at this National District Attorneys Association career prosecutor training was that it's not like the good old days when people would just defer to the integrity of the prosecutor or the integrity of law enforcement. Times have changed. So you don't have a choice. You can't sit still. You have to be out there and earn that respect in your own community. And as the elected prosecutor, what they told us is you have to be out there in your community, actively involved as a community leader on public safety issues, creating new resources, organizing public education campaigns, reaching out, organizing crime prevention efforts on things like crimes against the elderly, dropout prevention, sexual assault response teams, child advocacy centers. And that's what I have been doing here in Monroe County. And I like prevention and education. And one of my favorite sayings as prosecutor has been, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But I want to be very clear. It's not just about feel-good stuff. These are resources that make the criminal justice system work better, like the sexual assault nurse examiner program at the hospital, or like Susie's Place, our new child advocacy center here in Bloomington. They also help generate goodwill in the community that reflects positively on the criminal justice system and that feeds into the traditional role that prosecutors play in the courtroom as advocates. It builds positive associations towards law enforcement, towards the criminal justice system. It gives potential jurors a positive association that opens them up to hearing our case. Okay, I like the Get a Ride program to prevent drunk driving thing that I saw in the paper. I've heard about some of the crimes against the elderly initiatives that the prosecutor's office has been involved in. I read about, a story in the paper. I like the focus on dropout prevention. That's a good thing for the community. Okay, the state is out there doing some good things in the community. Let's listen to what the state has to say. Those kinds of positive associations are golden. They allow us to present our case in the courtroom to jurors who feel positive toward us, who have faith in the criminal justice system, who are willing to trust us. And it's about the public trust. It helps the criminal justice system function, and that helps us hold defendants accountable and win cases. During my time as prosecutor, I feel that I have been very lucky because I've had the opportunity to work with some great people. I've met some great cops with a lot of integrity, some unsung heroes, and I have an image in my head of what it means to be a good cop. I have role models that I think about. People like Jim Kennedy, people like Mike Hostetler and Keith Cash. People who believe in the job, who want to do a good job, people who really care about this community, and people who really care about public safety as a profession. I have a lot of respect for people like that. They deserve to be recognized and honored, and we can't honor them enough. I'm privileged to be a part of this event tonight, to have the opportunity to speak to you, and to have the opportunity to say what rarely gets to be said, and what should be said again and again. Two simple words. Thank you. Thank you to the Officer of the Year award recipients for this year, for the award recipients of past years. Thank you to all our public safety officers. Thank you for all the work that you do every day to maintain the public trust in this community, to build goodwill toward law enforcement and toward the criminal justice system. Thank you for protecting the lives and the safety of citizens in this community. Thank you to our award recipients, and thank you to all our public safety officers. Thank you.